Hey, what's up, everybody? Chad Calek here, and welcome back to episode number 152 of the In a Crowded Room podcast, where I have a story I want to share with you, and then I'm going to review a new series on Hulu called Dopesick that I watched, that I think everybody should watch. And the story relates to that in this way. Way back on September 1st, about 4 a.m. I was editing, and I took a break to go down and grab a pack of smokes and a Gatorade. And I went to the corner store. It's an AM PM. It's known as kind of a dangerous place to be at night. It's right on 4th and Pico. It's about a block from the train station, which is kind of what makes it dangerous, because the train from downtown that they put in primarily serves as a way to bring people from Skid Row down to Santa Monica, which is why Santa Monica has gotten to be a more rough neighborhood, you could say. So I had my headphones in when I pulled in, because I was actually listening to some music that I was editing to. And when that happens, I have a tendency to kind of just fall into that world, and I pulled up and I got out of my car and I'm listening to this music, and I open the door and I take a few steps in and I hear this just loud ruckus. And I look up, and the attendant that works there, his name is Juan, is actually a friend of mine. He's teaching me Spanish. Every time I go in there, we try to speak to each other in Spanish. He's a good guy. And I see him engaged in an absolute brawl with a homeless guy that's a little short. Juan's about 6 feet. The homeless guy's a little bit shorter. He's a real skinny black fellow with who's wearing a dress, which is weird. I don't know. Maybe it's not that weird when you're homeless. I guess you wear what you can find. It's unfortunate, but it's the way it is. And he has kind of I guess you can call it dirty dreadlocks. And that store is just ripped apart. I mean, candy shelves are on the ground. There's beers and waters everywhere. And I'm wondering how I missed this as I walked up to the door, and it was just because I was so involved in this music. So immediately, my heart starts pumping like crazy, and I step behind. The only stand that's in there that's standing up is this coffee stand. And I'm thinking, well, I can't leave Juan here. I mean, he's a friend. And, he's engaged in this brawl. And I don't really want to go over there and just start swinging on some dude that I don't know. So I kind of just decide I'm going to, peek through here, because he hasn't seen me yet, and just make sure that Juan is okay. And hopefully Juan will get the better of him. And if he needs help removing him or whatever, then I can help him. Well, this goes on for a while. I mean, and they are bouncing all over the place. They're more kind of like grappling, like they're swinging, but they're so close to each other, neither one's really connecting. But they're hitting everything in the store they could hit. And it goes on for a while, and then they kind of break up, and this homeless fellow opens the soda fridge, and he just starts launching soda cans. Juan's probably, 10, 15 feet away, so he's having to move quick to avoid these things. But as he's throwing these cans, he's backing up towards me. And I could see that another 3 or 4 steps backwards, and he's going to see me. And, of course, at that point, he's going to attack me too. That's certainly my thought. Now, I don't know how this whole thing started. I just walked in on it. But I can tell that this homeless fellow is not right in the head. He's yelling all kinds of gibberish, about hell, and I'll take you with me, and like, I'm the black demon of this, and a bunch of just crazy shit, right? So I know he's not well. I know he's high on something, and he's whacked out of his mind. So I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to wait till he sees me and then become the next guy that's, rustling around with him. So, and believe me, man, my heart's pumping. I'm not a fighter. You guys know this. I don't like fighting. I just feel like if two men have to go to fisticuffs, then intelligence has failed, man. I just, not to say that there's not a time where that's necessary, but I don't like fighting. It makes me ill. Just seeing it, like, not like UFC, but like seeing fights in the street, seeing Juan fight with him, it turns my stomach, man. I don't like violence. I was way too close to it as a kid. It's not something I like. But I'm thinking I got to do something because I'm not going to, engage in a fist fight with this guy. And the one thing I do know that I have on my side is size and strength. If I could get my hands on him, I can choke this dude out. And he's walking backwards towards me, so he doesn't even see me. So when he gets about 2 steps away, I just step out, go up to him, just grab him, like with my right arm under his neck, with my left arm wrapped around, like a sleeper hold type thing. And just started squeezing. It didn't take long, probably 10, 15 seconds, and he was flat out. But he like passed out, in the chokehold. So I'm holding him up by his neck and his body, and I'm freaking out because I'm thinking, I don't want to kill this guy. And I couldn't just set him down because I'm thinking the way I was holding him, once I let him go, his head's going to crack against the floor. So I said, Juan, help me. And I thought Juan was going to come up, and as I set him down on his butt, basically in his back, Juan would grab his back, and I could, softly lay him down and call the police. Well, Juan runs up and grabs his ankles and picks him up, and I got him by his neck, and I'm going, dude, what are you doing? Put him down. Put him down. Jesus Christ, we're going to kill him. And Juan wanted to throw him out the door, and I'm just like, Jesus. So I said, put his feet down. Come around here, man. And, laid him down softly so his head didn't crack against the floor. And I said, did you call the cops? Right as I said that, the police pulled up. I guess they have a button below the counter that you can hit that automatically dials the police, which he did. And the story I got from Juan was pretty simple. The guy came in and he was totally tweaking out, and he was bringing loads and loads and loads of stuff through the store up to the register and like just stacking it so high he couldn't even see Juan. And he kept going back and getting more stuff. But then he'd come and he'd put stuff back in a different spot. He was just out of it. He was drugged out of his mind. And Juan tried to get him to leave. And when he did, the guy went nuts. So thankfully, all of this was caught on camera. So when the police showed up, they had to quickly figure out what was going on, and they were cool to me, and I explained to them, I guess, my role in it. And it was funny. The guy goes, so I assume you're in MMA or something? I died laughing. I was like, me? Are you kidding me, dude? Do I look like I'm in MMA? Again, I'm practically a pacifist and a couch potato, dude. I'm an editor. Like, no, I am not an MMA. And I explained to him, I didn't know what else to do except, just try to basically put him to sleep, just knock him out, without hitting him, And, the guy woke up, and it was weird. When he woke up, he was out of it, and he was docile, and he was scared. And, of course, the police are not being nice to him, and I'm not saying they should be. He scared a lot of people, but I don't know. I guess I just saw for a few seconds who this guy was. I mean, not in detail, but the docile, coming out of a sleep, version of this guy. And man, I felt I felt terrible. Just not of what I did, or I just felt terrible for him, because I just, you could always tell who's been through addiction and who understands it and who doesn't by the way they speak about somebody who clearly has a problem. Um, it's funny. I talked to the police officer too, and I said, "So what's going to happen with him?" And he's like, "Well, we're gonna, book him for, um, I forgot what he said the charge would be, malice or attempted assault or something like that." And he said, "But the reality is, he'll be out in a few days, and he could potentially even try to bring charges against you guys." And I was like, "Charges against me? For what?" And he's like, "Well, he could claim it's assault. He can do whatever he wants to do, and you'd have to show up." And I was just like, "Well, that's ridiculous." I mean, and long story short, he did go to jail, from what I understand, and the tape was looked at and all this stuff, and it was all. He got in some kind of trouble, but it didn't last for long. I was talking to Juan about it, and the whole case kind of got thrown out. Um, but he didn't get in much trouble, and obviously I didn't have to go to court or anything or anything like that. So, um, but my point, being is, it's hard in those moments, at least for me, when I'm watching him kind of wake up and when he's scared, to not understand that there's a person there that doesn't want to be there, that doesn't want to be that isn't that, but something has a hold of him, something that changes him. And it's really interesting when like I said, when you've been through addiction and you know that, and which kind of brings me to this new series that I think everybody should see that's on Hulu. It's called Dopesick. And it's about the whole Purdue Pharma thing and the creation of OxyContin and how it was sold and how it was kind of pushed upon America. And you really, it's incredibly honest and a difficult watch, but it explains so much about OxyContin and addiction and just in general. And, I remember being a kid, the first time I really saw anything as a young child that involved addiction, I was watching New Jack City, and that movie just blew my mind. I was just like, New Jack City's the coolest shit I've ever seen. And Chris Rock played this character early on in Chris Rock's character or career. He played this character named Pookie, and in the New Jack City, Pookie was this guy that got hooked on crack cocaine, got hooked on crack. That was the big, obviously in the 80s, that was the big drug that kind of, ripped through the neighborhood. And in the film, he got clean off the crack and he was an informant. And, but they have this scene where they're cleaning him up and they kind of throw him in a padded room and lock him up and walk away. And you see him going through this, withdrawals. And I remember watching that film as a young kid and just going, I don't understand. He knows it's bad for him. Just stop it. Like, why does he want it so bad? It doesn't make any sense. Just stop doing it. And of course, obviously, as a young child, you don't have the wherewithal to understand what's going on. And, but I later learned in life, a lot of adults don't understand what's going on. When you see people and they say, well, that's bad for you, stop doing it. And what's really interesting in this Dopesick series, kind of the core of the whole series, outside of the Purdue Pharma story, and that story is pretty simple. When it comes to Western medicine, pain management used to be short-acting, like opiates, like you'd get a Vicodin or like a Percocet or something, and it's basically 4 hours of pain relief with a spike like within 30 or 40 minutes, meaning you take it and your brain releases like all the dopamine that's in it, and then it stops. and then your body feels really good. It's systematic. All those endorphins are rushing through. Dopamine. It's the same reaction as when you have an orgasm. It's the same thing, and this happens. It's basically the same process, but you go up and you come down, and your body basically counters by, for a short time period, of producing less dopamine before your body returns to homeostasis, which is like its normal state. So it's harder to get hooked on short-acting pain medications because they only disrupt, your body's natural state of homeostasis for a short time period. Now, if you take them around the clock, yes, you can get definitely hooked. But what OxyContin did is, it's exactly what it says. Oxy, so it's oxycodone, and contin, meaning continual. So they found a way where, you can take one pill and it would slowly, just like a morphine drip on your heart, it would just slowly release this over a long period of time, where this pill is literally teaching your body, you don't need to have your natural process. I got this. Like, the pill is teaching that part of your body and your brain automatically, immediately, to shut off and go to sleep and let it do the job of releasing endorphins. So the point being is, there is no class of person that it affects. There is no, it's not a black drug or a white drug or a Mexican drug. It's not a female or a male drug. It's not an old or a young drug. It's anybody who uses it for a period of time, by design, will become physically dependent. Anybody. Now, there is a difference between an addict and a non-addict. A person who's physically dependent will use it for a time period, and once they become physically dependent and realize that, they don't want it anymore. They want to stop. They want to return to their normal state. And of course, that's happened many times. Many people have used these drugs correctly. But what the drug revealed is that there's also many addicts. And I firmly believe that addiction is a disease. It's classified as that by the medical field. A lot of people say, oh, it's not a disease. No, it is. And I've seen it. I've seen it. I know it because, A, I'm one, and I have the disease of addiction. And it's to all things. But I can give you a prime example of this, of seeing somebody who was not an addict versus somebody who was. And the biggest example of somebody who did not have the disease, was my father. And as many of you guys know, when I was younger, my dad got burned over 75% of his body, 3rd degree. Now, there are no words that I can give you that could describe what I saw when I visited him 3 days after he was burned. The pain that he was in, he went from, weighing 190 pounds up to like 240 because they have to pump the body full of so many fluids because he has no skin. So his whole body is just a weeping mess. And so he was almost indistinguishable. Like you couldn't tell it was him. I mean, the swelling from that, the pain that he was in. Again, I had never seen somebody so broken, ever. And I said this in American Ghost Hunter. It was, you guys know how important my father was to me. I mean, he's literally the only hero I've ever known. And I said this before, I prayed for him to die because I did not see a way back, and I just saw pure suffering. And the way they managed the pain is they did a morphine drip over his heart, which is just a straight, steady stream of morphine just hitting your heart and forcing your body to just release massive amounts of endorphins and dopamine and and he did this for, gosh, it must have been 3 or 4 months that he was on these heavy narcotics. And just so you guys know, it's all the same shit. Heroin, Demerol, Vicodin, Percocet, Oxycontin. They're just all derivatives of morphine. And they're all extremely addictive, and everybody knows this, and that's why, when you're watching Dopesick, it's so ridiculous when they're acting and they're saying, well, Oxycontin's, it's only addictive to 1% of patients. Anybody who knows anything about anything with any kind of pain medication knows that if it's a derivative of morphine, which they all are, it's going to be addictive. But anyways, my point being is my dad had finally gotten to the point where, by a miracle, his body started healing. And then one day he decided that he didn't want to take the pain medication anymore. And, it's wild when the further you are away from having a chance of living, the less doctors care about the addiction side. My dad was given a 5% chance of living after he was burned. And they could care less about the addiction side. They're thinking, let's just save his life. We'll deal with the addict stuff later. And it makes sense, And so once he started healing, he just, he decided he was done. And he didn't want it. And he just stopped. And he went through withdrawals, went through all of it. Could have had anything he wanted. Could have had anything he wanted at any time for years until he passed away. There would be nobody that would look at his body and what he had to go through on a daily basis with all the scar tissue and all that stuff and turn him down. And he just stopped. He's not an addict. I mean, he's not. And, I remember the first time my doctor had put me on years ago, back in 2005. It was like my first kind of dance with all this stuff. And I remember, I had a big bottle of Norks. And I would, obviously use them. And then whenever they would start wearing off, you'd want to take more. And I'd given Justin a couple. And then the next day he wanted a couple more. And the next day he wanted a couple more. And then he woke up one morning, like the fourth day, and he was like, man, I feel like shit, dude. And he goes, I think it's those Norcos, man. My back hurts. I feel like shit right now. And I go, yeah, you want a couple more? And he's like, no, I know, man. I don't want anything. I want to feel normally. And it just dawned on me that, man, that's the difference between our brains. Like his brain says, I feel like shit. I think it's because of this. I don't want it anymore, where my brain would say, I feel like shit because of this, I need some more of it. And it was just, it dawned on me, that natural thought process, and thinking back to my dad, and it was one of my first signs that I knew I was a little bit different. And, again, by the grace of God, I was able to conquer this and come out on the other side. But what's great about Dopesick also, like I said, this series, it starts out with this doctor, Michael Keaton, who in the beginning is a genuinely good guy that is trying to take care of this like coal mining community, and he sees injuries all the time. And initially everybody thought, my God, this OxyContin stuff is just incredible. I mean, like, people with severe injuries are up and working 12 hours and over the course of time, this doctor, sees that this thing's working, but he starts to see the downside of it when it stops working, and now people have to take more and more and more and more. And he's seeing that everybody that he's given this stuff to, he's they're all becoming addicts, and he begins to use it, to try it, and it feels so good to him that he keeps going. And his character is so hard to watch because he loses his wife early on, and that was like his focus in his life. And his other focus was his practice, being a doctor. And before you know it, he's hooked on this stuff himself, and he's now doctor shopping and just going to ridiculous, embarrassing lengths to try to find more and more of this stuff because, his addiction level just rages out of control. And he eventually loses his license, and now he's lost his wife and his license, and his reason to live becomes the high. Because, like I said before, the only way to beat that type of addiction is you got to find something you love more than the high. And the high is really good. I mean, it first and foremost, it takes away emotional pain, which I think is the most addictive thing about it. And it also takes away, the physical pain. And you see that how all these people in the beginning who were genuinely good people just get turned into a fucking slave for this drug. And I never had to go down the roads that I saw in this film, and it's a tough watch, and there's some dark, dark, dark moments where you see what people were willing to do to get their hands on this drug, and how and why it took over. And thankfully, I again had enough in my life, to make my bottom, I guess, a little bit higher than some others, but nonetheless, there's a bottom, and it is really sad because you can't make somebody stop. Like, they have to find it themselves. And for a lot of people, over 90% of the people that get hooked on this stuff, they will never find that bottom. They will never find the thing that makes them want to stop. And, Michael Keaton does an incredible job of portraying this poor doctor, man. It's a hard watch. But what the film does, it's just such an honest series, and it just shows that for the people that do want to get off, which at one point, I think everybody does, but then they learn about what narcotic withdrawals are. And unless you've been through it, there's no way to describe it. It is hell on earth. You can't imagine the hell. And right now, there are people listening to this podcast right now that are addicted. And I know that. I know that for a fact. And I know they know everything I'm talking about. And I know that their life is incredibly difficult because of what they're going through. And I guess the reason I always talk about this stuff is because A, there is a way out. It is possible. And I always want people to know that, look, if someone like me could find a way to beat this, I believe anybody can. Because again, I am a true addict to anything, food, video games, opiates, women, like anything at all that I have just struggled my whole life with being an addict towards anything that just feels good. And it's been a serious battle, but it is achievable. And for each person, that thing you love more than the high it's a personal thing. But I think the thing that I didn't know when I was younger watching Chris Rock play Pookie, and a lot of people don't know as adults, is that nobody, most people want to get off. Like they're scared to death of the withdrawals. And that's what keeps people hooked. That's what will drive people to ridiculous levels to do tons of stupid shit. If they don't have a doctor, that'll write them scripts. And I had a script happy doctor, you know. If you don't have that access to it, then yeah, people will do crazy shit to avoid being that sick. And that's a big reason for that. And that was designed by Purdue Pharma. It was designed to work that way. They made a medication knowing that it would very quickly teach the body and teach the brain to shut down and that aspect of its process and let the pills take care of it. And then without the pills, you have no endorphins, you have no dopamine, massive depression sits in, ungodly body pain, sickness, and it comes fast in a matter of hours. Especially if you start using really short-acting, high buzzing opiates like fentanyl. You know, fentanyl is actually very short-acting, but it shoots you super high, and it brings you down really fast. And it's super cheap to make, and that's why druggies like using on the streets, because it creates withdrawals really fast, and it brings people back really fast. But yeah, it could kill you really easy, just because it takes such a little amount to, shoot you up there. But Dopesick does an incredible job of showing why people stay on, why they got started. There's one girl in there that almost makes it out, and it just breaks your heart, because you're seeing these stories, and it does a great job of showing that the battle is never over. It's a daily battle for anybody who's an addict. It does a great job of showing that it changes who people are fundamentally. And that's what I saw in that guy's face that I choked. When he woke up, for a second, I just got a glimpse of who he was. And I felt for him, because, we have one life, man. In this lifetime, imagine what it would take to fall that low and become that lost and that in need of help. And knowing that a lot of people who just don't understand it will immediately judge you like you're just some evil, bad person that, was a born disruptor, and you just want to mess with people's lives and hurt people, and you're crazy and you're dangerous, and you've become all those things because the drugs have changed who you are. But I don't know, I guess something told me in that moment of looking at him, like I said, in this kind of docile, scared, he looked kind of like a scared little kid, like a little boy almost. I mean, he woke up and there's cops around him and he's getting handcuffed, and, he already doesn't have a pot to piss in, man. He doesn't have anything. And now he's got, caught a case too, and I don't know. It was a hard night. Because I certainly wasn't proud of anything I did. I just was protecting myself and trying to bring the whole situation to a close, and it just made me really thank God that I was able to get out of that world way before that ever came. But I urge you all to watch Dopesick. It's on Hulu. It just really, really shows an honesty like I haven't seen. Please give it a watch. I think you guys, if it's stuff great. If it's not, it's a huge educational tool that has some brilliant acting performances in it. And a rare truth about opiates and the business of opiates and Western medicine in general. A very rare truth is spoken throughout that whole series. So, having said that, thank you guys for listening to me rant on about all this stuff. I only talk about the opiate thing once or twice in a year, just because I think it's important to talk about, man. I've lost Oh, geez, 11 now. 11 friends from opiate overdose that I know of. Um, which I guess if you kind of grow up in the music business, that's going to happen. But it didn't have to, you know? It didn't have to. So, um, also, if you guys enjoy the podcast, please visit our Patreon page. There's all kinds of unreleased videos and photos and evidence and graphics and music and all kinds of cool stuff there that I only release for you, our Patreon supporters. And if you're unable to support us on Patreon, just keep listening, keep telling people about the podcast. You guys are doing amazing. If you haven't, please take the time right now to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. The podcast is growing every single day, which I love that it's ours, and I love that we're building it our way. So thank you all so much for listening, and I will be back tomorrow with more. All the best.